welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Katie, I'm a full-time artist, and I've just finished a 100-day daily art challenge. So it's been a while since I've done a sit-down chatty sort of video, but I wanted to recap the challenge, talk about how I found it, what I've learned from it, and also share some of my favourites from this last half. I've already recapped the first half on my channel and talked a little bit how I was finding it as I reached the halfway point, so I will link that up in the cards if you're interested and want to see how it compares to how I feel now. So if you've been following me on Instagram for a while, you'll know that I actually did a full year of daily art last year from 2021 to 2022, and I wanted something a little easier this time. I wanted to do a 100-day challenge. I'll do a recap and some lessons that I've learned along the way towards the end of the video, because for now I want to share some of my favourites. So we're going to start off by sharing some of my favourites from the last 50 days, and I want to start with day 59, which was this piece that I did on an Emma Carlisle Patreon session. I really love the softness of this one. I think this was the first time where I did different shaped panels. If you see my art before, you'll know I usually just do squares or rectangles, and so doing these sort of blob shapes was really interesting for me, and this sort of had a narrative to it. So this was the first landscape, and then each panel you're kind of zooming in each time. So we're zooming in closer to that same house, and then inside the house we're looking out where there's a cat in the window, and then this woman here by the fire. These two are definitely out of my comfort zone. They were a little tricky, especially with the woman. I'm not sure I captured her perfectly, but it was a tricky image with the fire, and I feel like I did capture that glow. I really like the cat, but my favourite are definitely these two panels over here. Obviously landscapes are my comfort zone and I really enjoy drawing them. But there just feels like a softness to this, and I think that might come from the base layer, which was a really warm beige, and I just really love the colour palette on this one and really pleased with how it turned out. I will leave a link to Emma's Patreon below and anything that I mention in this video. So speaking of Patreon sessions, this one is actually from one of my own drawing sessions. I have a Patreon and we do a Zoom call every month where we draw from references that I'll share on screen. And for this month it was actually Plein Air month, so I wanted to talk about drawing on location and also doing it virtually if we can't get outside. So this was actually a live stream. I shared a post on Patreon where I shared loads of different live streams so you can sort of get that idea of the movement and seeing it real time, but obviously you're not there in real life. So this was in Italy, this was in Umbria, and we drew from these live streams that were around the region. And I actually didn't like these pages. It was this one and also this spread, but I didn't love it when I first did it, and now I'm looking back I'm really fond of it. So I always find that I don't love something at first. Most of the time I don't love what I create until like the next day or having a little bit of space from it. So definitely something I've learned. And again, you can see where the influence from the first page I showed you has come in here with the different panels. Worked really nicely with this tower up here. And I just really love the colours again. I really like that pop of yellow. There's tiny pops of turquoise there. And then I pushed back the background, which I really enjoy doing with pan pastels now. And it was just a really fun session with my patrons. Really nice to see like the cars and people moving about. So there was a little bit of a challenge there, but it wasn't so much of a busy scene that it felt impossible to draw and capture. And I just really like the warmth. I'm definitely leaning into my beige Posca, and I really have been enjoying using that for my base layer. So the next page and drawing I want to share is actually a bit of a wild card for me because it's very different. This was when I was first experimenting with oil pastels. Obviously I have got that video, again I'll link it up in the cards, of comparing oil pastels, so I've definitely been experimenting more with them recently during the daily art challenge, but with this one I just had so much fun with it and I'm really pleased with the result. So these are completely done with oil pastels and then some coloured pencils for the details and these leafy bits around. This one started off really badly. I did the fox and then I started one which went awfully. I think it was a fox head. So I actually covered it up with this brown paper, which worked really well for the raccoon because it meant that the white could show through. So that was a really happy accident and one that worked in my favour and definitely something that I've learnt from. So I've done another spread like this and I actually purposefully put the brown paper down because I learnt about it from here. that's always nice to push out your comfort zone and learn something as well to then take forward in your art. But I just really like these. I really like the stylization of the bear and the colours, and I just think it's a really fun, happy spread. And I definitely have been trying to push myself with oil pastels, and I definitely feel like I'm getting more comfortable with them and reaching more control in my work. Day 72 is this spread in my sketchbook, which was drawn from photos. So I think it was the weekend before this, we'd gone to Pepperbox Hill, which is a small National Trust place near Salisbury, and I drew these from photos. I did this larger view with the cows there, which I think worked out really nicely, and then one of the wider view the other way of the countryside, and then these forget-me-nots down here. And I love the vibrancy of this. I really like how this has broken out of the panel and the way that it merges onto this page. But one of the reasons I flagged this one and all of the other ones to come, especially this one on day 76, is because I feel like I've turned a corner in my style, and I've really found this sort of journaling style that feels very me. So like I mentioned, day 76 is this spread, which is of my grandma's garden, and I took some photos from all the way back in 2019, and then I've drawn and painted them in my sketchbook in these panels. This was inspired by Lucia Layfield. I took her garden workshop course, and that's what I created during that workshop, and it's definitely pushed my style forward into a place that feels really exciting, and adding these panels but also merging it with like text and journaling and making it more personal to me. I've got a video again on YouTube talking about finding that connection, and I feel like this has really ticked that box for me. So these were very tricky references, and it is quite a messy spread. Like, it's not very neat or detailed, but I did capture a lot of colour and movement in there, and I just really like this pop of pink for the text and around the panels. So I'm going to show you quickly some of the other journal style spreads. So there was this one, which was day 79, and again, this was just from a walk around my neighbourhood and seeing all the different colours I could find, because I feel like I don't often notice these things, and if I'm just walking, then I'm just like straight ahead. Whereas for this page, I purposefully try to look for colour, and so all of these weeds and wildflowers I wanted to capture in my sketchbook, and there is a process video for this one if you want to see it. And there's also a process video for this one, which is day 81. So this one was where I was talking about finding connection in your sketchbook, and I really am proud of this one. I really like the typography down here. I think that works really nicely. And then again, the mix of panels and things breaking out of panels, and this cow here. So following on from these journal style spreads, I decided to run a session on my Patreon talking through how I have been working, how I've been using the references, and how to layer out on the page. So again, I'll leave a link to my Patreon down below if you fancy joining us. And we do get together every month on Zoom, and we have a bi-monthly YouTube live stream as well. But I'm really proud of this spread. This is the one that we did on that session, and we used my photos. Some people use their own photos, and it's just a really nice way to document memories. There's obviously a lot more text on this one, but I really like it. It's a nice way to incorporate your feelings and like what you did, as well as obviously using the photos as reference. Again, I really like the playfulness. I've added some like sparkles around, which I think are a really nice touch. Put like the date in a box, and again with the colour palettes. And I just really like doing this style. It feels very natural for me, and I'm really pleased to have found a way for it to work in my sketchbooks. Next up, I want to share day 95, which this is probably the quickest one that I've done for the Daily Art Challenge. This was again on one of Emma Carlisle's Patreon sessions, but this was a replay, so it was quite a few months ago, and I used some photos that she'd uploaded from her mum's garden. And they were really quick timed sketches, so this one was 3 minutes and this one was 6 minutes. And you can really see the energy and the movement there. You can see how quick I was trying to work to capture those tomatoes and the watering can. And there's just something about this spread I'm really proud of. I really love the colour palette, and even though it was one of the quickest spreads I've done, it's actually become one of my favourites. I really like the texture here, and I definitely like the style, so this is definitely something I want to continue and try and push further. Okay, so the very last one I want to mention for this half of the recap and the favourite work is actually day 100. So I created this little zine for the very last day of the sketchbook challenge, and I love creating little zines. I did a little fold-out zine which was tiny for my year-long daily art challenge, so I wanted to do something similar, but this was to a bigger scale, and I just picked out some pieces from the daily art challenge, so from all of the 100 days, and then I made this little zine which is made up from one A3 piece of paper. It's just very playful. I feel like it captures the project as a whole, which is what I wanted to do. I was debating just doing a normal landscape and painting that for day 100, but I'm really pleased I pushed myself to create this, even though obviously it took a little longer. I painted 2 of the pages, so I painted this one here, which is of Grandma's Garden, which you'll have seen that I shared earlier, and I also painted the front cover, which is this lighthouse view. So this one wasn't a day that I've done before, but just for day 100. And that was a live stream on YouTube, so we actually hit 40,000 followers, which was incredible, over on Instagram. And so it was like a double celebration. It just worked out perfectly with timing. So the live stream is available to watch on my YouTube channel under the live tab. But again, I'll link that down below if you want to see these pieces come to life and paint along with me. I have shared the reference on screen and you can see me paint these. But again, really happy with this one. I'll show you how it folds out. So it's like this, one piece of paper and then a slit in the middle. And I just think it's really playful. I'm really glad I ended the challenge with this. And it's a nice memento of the whole project. So now I've talked through all of my favourites, I thought I would talk about the key lessons and takeaways I found from this project. I will be comparing it to my 313-day project, so the year-long one, and how it compares to that. But one of the main things I've learned is that 100 days is the perfect amount of time for me. It felt really manageable and it wasn't too long. Obviously, it's still a large amount of work, but the year-long one was way harder and I definitely had a lot more pressure on myself for that one. I feel like 100 days is the perfect amount of time because I can still see the development in my work. I can still see where I've got themes and things, and I feel like I can see more growth, whereas I think if it was shorter, I wouldn't see that as much. So I'll definitely consider doing 100 days in the future. I'm never going to say never to a challenge like this again, but I definitely know that if I am going to do one, it will be 100 days and not 1 year. The second takeaway is that I feel like I had a lot more fun with this one. I felt like my pressure and the expectations I had on myself wasn't as much as the full year one. So one of the things that I always get asked when I say I'm doing a daily art challenge, or when I'm in one, is any advice for people who want to do them themselves. And I did record a video last year when I finished the year-long one, so I will link that up in the cards and down below if you're interested. But the main advice I have is to make it work for you. Obviously, I have a lot more time as a full-time artist, so I can set aside an hour a day to create, but there's a lot of external factors that you'll want to take into account, whether 5 days or a full week is possible for you, or maybe every other day. The year-long one I did 6 days a week, and this one I did 5 days a week, which definitely felt better for me to have the full weekend off, and it still felt like a lot of work. So I'm really pleased with the balance I had. My workload is a lot more than it was last year, and I definitely feel like I've been able to balance it well, and I couldn't have done a whole year one, so I'm glad I only did 100 days, which is another area where the expectations and making it work for me came in. I'm really pleased with the work I created, and one of the things that I found was different to this project compared to the first one was that I can see continuation. I feel like I didn't really do that with the year-long one. It was more of fill a sketchbook page, move on and do something completely different. Whereas for this one, the whole idea was to play in my sketchbook and to not just do one thing and then leave it. So especially in the first half, you can see that with my greenhouse project, and in the second half with my journal style sketchbooking. But it's really fun to be able to see that continuation, to really see it develop and evolve. I really liked the greenhouse project, but I didn't know where to go next. So that's why I only kept that into the first half. But it also meant that there was room for me to try new things for the second half, and that's where the journal style sketchbooking came in. So really nice to see those themes develop and, like I say, evolve. And I definitely feel like you can see my style has evolved too. I feel like there's more confidence there in my mark making, and it's definitely cemented my love for landscapes and nature art. So it just feels like I'm coming out of this with more confidence, but I also have experimented a lot, which was my main goal for this project. The whole idea of this and the name of it was 100 Days of Sketchbook Play, and I'm really proud of the work that I've created. I feel like I really did play in my sketchbook. There's a lot of pieces that were very fun, and I did experiment with new media as well. So oil pastels is the main one that I discovered during this project. Not necessarily discovered, but actually tried and used, and I think that I probably wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for this project. I might have used them once and that was that, whereas with this one I have used it multiple times. But it was really fun to try a new medium, and I definitely feel like those experiments have made me feel more confident with oil pastels as a medium. So overall, I am really pleased with the work that I created. I had a lot of fun on this project, so definitely nice to see the themes and my confidence evolving, as well as my art style. And the time that it was, the 100 days, is definitely something that I've learned that I want to continue. I also feel like the pressure was a lot lower. So the whole idea for my first year-long challenge was to grow my social media and to develop my style. Whereas this one was a lot more playful. I wanted it to be a lot less pressure. And I definitely feel like that worked for me. And it still has worked with my style. I've still developed that and grown in confidence and skill. But I definitely feel a lot better mentally. I really put myself under a lot of pressure for that first one, and I was really aware that I didn't want that again. So I definitely feel like I've adjusted that, and although there were some pieces and some work that I know I did under more pressure than I would like, it definitely felt like the challenge as a whole was a lot more relaxed, and I think that comes through in the work as well. Obviously, doing a daily art challenge isn't easy, and there are some weeks where you won't want to pick up a paintbrush at all. But then there will be some weeks where it just flows out of you so easily and you don't ever want to stop. So I think as a creative, it's normal to have that roller coaster, and even more so in a daily art challenge. I do find that the accountability helps. So that's another thing that I've learned with daily art challenges, is that it really helps me to prioritize creating. It's one of the reasons why I started the daily art challenge again, and also the first time, because as an artist, there's still a lot of admin and editing and computer work to do, and it meant that creating art and actually drawing was quite low on my list. And so doing this challenge and having that accountability to show up for 5 days of the week in my sketchbook definitely meant I prioritized it again, and I feel like that's made a huge difference to my work. So going forward, although the challenge has ended, I'm still trying to create regularly in my sketchbook, but obviously I'm not doing it every day. It's really nice to not have that pressure. And one of the questions that kept coming up towards the end of the project for me was, what would I create if nobody was looking? What would I draw if I knew I wasn't going to put this on Instagram? That's a question that I'm really interested to answer. So I might be creating in my sketchbooks, but I won't actually share it. And if I do, down the line, it will be on Patreon. But I want to see what happens in my sketchbooks, knowing that it's just my eyes only. Because obviously doing a daily art challenge and uploading it on social media means you're creating in part with that. And so I want to see what happens when I create without that. I think that's really exciting, and I'm really eager to see what I create and where my art goes knowing that. So that wraps up this video. I really hope it was helpful, and I'd love to know if you have any favourites from the Daily Art Challenge, whether I mentioned them in this video or if you've seen them on Instagram and I haven't mentioned it here. Obviously, our opinions are totally different and art is very subjective, and sometimes I find that the ones I like the least are the ones that connect and people like the most. So I find it really interesting if you wanted to share your favourites down below. I will leave everything I've mentioned down below, including the Daily Art Challenge help video, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a really lovely week, and I will see you next Sunday with a new video. See you later.